The Akkadian Empire, the first great empire in human history, stretched across the fertile plains of Mesopotamia, uniting a diverse tapestry of peoples and cultures under a single banner. At its heart stood the city of Akkad, a beacon of power, trade, and innovation. It was here, amidst the grand palaces and bustling markets, that a queen named Tashlultum quietly shaped history, though her name is often eclipsed by the towering legacy of her husband, Naram-Sin, the king of the four quarters, who dared to declare himself a god. Tashlultum was far more than a royal consort. She was a strategist, a diplomat, and a mother whose influence reached deep into the core of the empire's strength. While Naram-Sin's victories were immortalized in stone and song, Tashlultum's contributions remained woven into the fabric of the empire itself, subtle yet enduring, born into a world of shifting alliances and ambitious dynasties. Tashlultum's early life remains shrouded in mystery, yet her rise to the throne marked the beginning of a partnership that would define an era. As Naram-Sin expanded the empire's borders with military might, Tashlultum secured its foundations through wisdom and diplomacy. Together, they stood as the embodiment of divine authority and mortal resilience in an age of gods and kings. This is the untold story of Tashlultum, the queen who stood beside one of history's most enigmatic rulers. It is a tale of power, love, and sacrifice, set against the backdrop of a civilization at its zenith. As we journey through the rise and fall of the Akkadian Empire, we will uncover the legacy of a woman whose quiet strength shaped the course of history, even as her name faded into obscurity. The world of Mesopotamia was one of constant flux, a land of fertile rivers, bustling cities, and endless rivalries. It was here, between the Tigris and Euphrates, that the Akkadian Empire was born under the vision and might of Sargon the Great, Naram-Sin's legendary grandfather. By the time Tashlultum entered the story, Akkad had grown from a city-state to an empire stretching across vast swathes of the known world. Her arrival in the royal court came during a period of both opportunity and uncertainty, a time when the foundations of Akkad's greatness were still being laid. Tashlultum's origins remain veiled, but what is clear is that her marriage to Naram-Sin was no mere romantic union. It was a calculated alliance. Born into a powerful family with ties to influential city-states, Tashlultum brought with her not only a regal bearing but also the political capital necessary to secure Naram-Sin's ascent. In Mesopotamian culture, marriage often served as a bridge between rival powers, and their union was no exception. It symbolized stability in a volatile world, binding together factions within the empire and forging new alliances with neighboring territories. In the early days of their partnership, Akkad was still reeling from the challenges of governing such a vast and diverse domain. Under Sargon, the empire had expanded rapidly, stretching from the Persian Gulf to the Mediterranean. Yet, with this growth came new threats: rebellious city-states, hostile nomads, and the logistical strain of maintaining control over distant provinces. Naram-Sin, though a man of immense ambition, needed a partner who could help him navigate the labyrinth of Akkadian politics. In Tashlultum, he found not only a wife but an equal, a woman whose intelligence and foresight would prove invaluable. Tashlultum's presence in the court was felt immediately. Unlike many queens of her time, who were relegated to the private spheres of palace life, Tashlultum stepped into a more active role. She oversaw the management of domestic affairs, ensuring the empire's sprawling bureaucracy ran smoothly, from the grain supplies that fed the empire's armies to the diplomatic correspondences that kept vassal states in check. Tashlultum's influence was omnipresent, even if it often went unacknowledged in the official records. Her ability to mediate disputes became legendary within the court. Akkadian governors and officials, often at odds with one another over resources and authority, found in Tashlultum a fair and discerning arbitrator. It was said that her words carried the weight of wisdom, and her decisions were accepted even by those who had much to lose. This skill was not born of mere intuition. It was the result of a keen understanding of human nature and an exhaustive knowledge of the intricate web of relationships that underpinned Akkadian society. As Naram-Sin began to emerge as a powerful leader in his own right, he faced the monumental task of stepping out of his grandfather's shadow. Sargon the Great had been a towering figure, a king whose conquests had reshaped Mesopotamia. For Naram-Sin, the weight of this legacy was both an inspiration and a burden. Tashlultum, however, provided him with the steadying influence he needed. She reminded him that while conquest could win glory, it was the art of governance that secured immortality. It was during these formative years that Tashlultum's greatest strength began to shine, her ability to unite people. She recognized that the Akkadian Empire was not merely a collection of conquered territories, but a fragile tapestry of cultures, languages, and traditions. To hold it together required more than brute force. It demanded diplomacy, respect, and understanding. Tashlultum championed policies that celebrated this diversity, encouraging cultural exchange and mutual respect among the empire's many peoples. Festivals became occasions for unity, and temples were built to honor not only the Akkadian gods but also the deities of subjugated peoples. Through these efforts, she fostered a sense of shared identity that extended beyond tribal or city-state loyalties. Her influence extended even to the military, while Naram-Sin led campaigns to secure the empire's borders. Tashlultum worked behind the scenes to ensure the troops were supplied and morale remained high. She established networks of messengers and supply chains that could respond swiftly to the needs of the army, a logistical feat that rivaled the empire's greatest architectural achievements. Soldiers came to respect her as much as they did their king, knowing that her efforts were critical to their success. Yet, her life was not without personal sacrifice. The demands of being queen meant that Tashlultum often placed the needs of the empire above her own. The pressures of maintaining unity in a fractious court and ensuring the empire's survival weighed heavily on her. Despite this, she remained steadfast, driven by an unwavering belief in the vision she shared with Naram-Sin, a vision of an empire that could stand the test of time. By the time Naram-Sin ascended to the throne, the foundation of their partnership had been firmly established. Together, they represented the dual pillars of Akkad, the warrior king and the wise queen, the conqueror and the peacemaker. Their combined efforts set the stage for what would become the golden age of the Akkadian Empire. While history would later remember Naram-Sin for his conquests and divine ambitions, those who lived during their reign knew the truth, that behind every triumph stood Tashlultum, the queen in the shadows, whose quiet strength held the empire together. The coronation of Naram-Sin marked the beginning of a new era for the Akkadian Empire, a moment as grand and consequential as it was fraught with challenges. For Tashlultum, it was both a triumph and a test, for she stood not only as the queen beside her husband, but as a vital architect of his ascent to the throne. It was in this chapter of their lives that the partnership between the two reached its full expression, a partnership forged in ambition, strategy, and mutual respect. Naram-Sin's path to the throne had not been without obstacles. Following the death of his father, Manishtushu, the royal court became a cauldron of intrigue. Factions vied for influence, each seeking to position their preferred candidate as the next king. The vastness of the empire exacerbated these tensions, as governors and military leaders in distant provinces weighed their loyalty against their ambitions. It was Tashlultum who emerged as a stabilizing force in this storm, rallying support for her husband and deftly navigating the treacherous waters of court politics. Her methods were both shrewd and subtle. Tashlultum understood the importance of perception in consolidating power. Through carefully orchestrated ceremonies and displays of unity, she presented Naram-Sin as the natural successor to his father, a man destined not only by blood, but by divine favor to lead the Akkadian Empire. Religious rituals played a central role in this strategy, as high priests anointed Naram-Sin in the name of the gods. Tashlultum ensured that the ceremony was attended by representatives from every corner of the empire, reinforcing the idea that his rule was universally accepted. The coronation itself was a spectacle of unparalleled grandeur. Held in the heart of Akkad, the ceremony was designed to awe both the empire's subjects and its enemies. Tashlultum played a central role in its planning, ensuring that every detail symbolized the unity and strength of Akkad. The procession began at the temple of Enlil, the chief deity of the Mesopotamian pantheon, and wound its way through the city's streets, which were lined with cheering crowds. Naram-Sin, clad in ceremonial armor and adorned with a golden diadem, was accompanied by Tashlultum, who walked beside him with regal grace, her presence a reminder of the stability and continuity they promised together. As the coronation reached its climax, Naram-Sin ascended the throne and took the oath of kingship. His words, etched into the memories of those present, declared his commitment to protecting the empire and upholding the god's will. Yet, for all the focus on the new king, those who watched closely could see the influence of Tashlultum in every aspect of the event. From the banners that bore the emblems of conquered territories to the hymns that celebrated Akkad's unity, her hand was evident. With the crown secure on Naram-Sin's head, the couple turned their attention to the monumental task of governance. The early years of his reign were marked by both consolidation and innovation, and it was during this period that Tashlultum's contributions became even more pronounced. She took on an expanded role in the administration, working closely with the royal council to address the empire's most pressing challenges. Whether it was mediating disputes between governors or managing the allocation of resources, Tashlultum's influence was indispensable. One of her most significant achievements during this time was the establishment of a more efficient system of communication across the empire. Recognizing the difficulties posed by Akkad's vast size, she spearheaded the creation of a network of couriers and way stations, allowing messages to travel more quickly between the capital and outlying provinces. This innovation not only improved governance but also strengthened the empire's sense of cohesion, as distant regions felt more connected to the center of power. Tashlultum also played a crucial role in the empire's cultural life. Under her guidance, Akkad became a hub of artistic and intellectual activity. Poets and scribes were invited to the court to compose works that celebrated the empire's achievements, while artisans created sculptures and reliefs that immortalized its glory. Tashlultum understood the power of culture as a unifying force, and she used it to foster a shared identity among Akkad's diverse populations. However, the coronation and the early years of Naram-Sin's reign were not without challenges. Rebellions flared in several regions, fueled by resentment over Akkad's dominance and the heavy tribute it demanded. In these moments of crisis, Tashlultum's steadying presence proved invaluable. She worked tirelessly to maintain morale in the court and among the populace, emphasizing the importance of unity in the face of adversity. Her ability to inspire loyalty extended beyond the palace walls, as she cultivated relationships with key leaders and ensured their support for the crown. One particularly notable instance of her diplomacy occurred during a rebellion in the eastern provinces. While Naram-Sin led the army to suppress the uprising, Tashlultum remained in Akkad, coordinating efforts to provide supplies and reinforcements. At the same time, she reached out to local leaders in the region, persuading them to abandon the rebellion and pledge their allegiance to the empire. Her efforts not only shortened the conflict, but also minimized its long-term impact on the empire's stability. Through these trials, the bond between Tashlultum and Naram-Sin deepened. Their partnership was one of mutual respect and shared purpose, a rarity in a world where queens were often sidelined. Naram-Sin trusted Tashlultum implicitly, relying on her counsel in matters both great and small. In turn, she saw in him the embodiment of Akkad's potential, a leader capable of transcending the achievements of his forebears and securing a legacy for future generations. By the end of this phase of their reign, Akkad stood stronger than ever. The coronation had not only solidified Naram-Sin's rule, but had also set the tone for what would become a golden age of the Akkadian Empire. At the heart of it all was Tashlultum, whose vision and dedication ensured that the promises made during the coronation were fulfilled. Though history would remember the ceremony as Naram-Sin's moment of triumph, Those who knew the truth understood that it was as much a testament to Tashlultum's strength as it was to his. This chapter of their story marked the beginning of a journey that would see Akkad reach unparalleled heights and, eventually, face unimaginable trials. For now, however, the empire basked in the glow of its newly crowned king and queen, their partnership a beacon of hope in a world of uncertainty. Together, they stood poised to shape the destiny of Mesopotamia, their names forever intertwined in the annals of history. As Naram-Sin's reign progressed, the Akkadian Empire entered a period of remarkable expansion and consolidation. To the outside world, the king was the empire's face, its sword, and its shield. His victories in battle and his relentless ambition inspired both fear and admiration across Mesopotamia. Yet within the palace walls, where the demands of governance were unrelenting, Tashlultum's influence quietly but unmistakably shaped the empire's trajectory. She was not merely the queen beside the throne. She was the steady hand behind it. Tashlultum understood the delicate balance required to maintain control over an empire as vast and diverse as Akkad. Conquest alone was not enough. The real challenge lay in governance, to hold the loyalty of far-flung provinces. Tashlultum worked tirelessly to ensure that every region felt invested in the empire's success. She achieved this not through decrees or proclamations, but through a deep understanding of diplomacy and human nature. One of her most innovative contributions was the practice of incorporating the customs and traditions of conquered peoples into the broader Akkadian cultural fabric. Rather than imposing Akkadian beliefs and practices on subjugated territories, Tashlultum advocated for a policy of cultural inclusion. Temples dedicated to local deities were not only preserved but often enhanced with Akkadian resources. Priests from these regions were invited to the royal court, where they participated in discussions and rituals alongside their Akkadian counterparts. This approach fostered a sense of mutual respect and cooperation, reducing the likelihood of rebellion and strengthening the empire's unity. In the bustling city of Akkad, the royal palace became a microcosm of this inclusive policy. Ambassadors from distant provinces, clad in the distinctive garb of their homelands, mingled with Akkadian officials in its grand halls. Tashlultum took a personal interest in these envoys, hosting elaborate feasts and ceremonies to honor their arrival. Her ability to make each visitor feel valued and respected earned her a reputation as a gracious and perceptive leader. Many left Akkad not only loyal to the empire but also deeply impressed by the queen's wisdom and hospitality. Beyond diplomacy, Tashlultum's impact was felt in the empire's economic and administrative systems. She worked closely with scribes and officials to streamline the collection of taxes and tributes, ensuring that the wealth of the empire was efficiently managed. Under her guidance, Akkad's granaries and storehouses were expanded, creating reserves that could be used during times of famine or war. This foresight proved invaluable in maintaining stability, particularly during periods of drought that occasionally afflicted the region. Tashlultum's efforts also extended to the empire's infrastructure. Recognizing the importance of communication and mobility, she championed the construction of roads and canals that connected the empire's farthest reaches. These projects not only facilitated trade but also allowed for the swift movement of troops and information. Merchants and travelers alike marveled at the efficiency of Akkad's transportation network, which rivaled anything seen before in Mesopotamia. While Naram-Sin was often away on military campaigns, Tashlultum effectively managed the empire in his absence. She presided over the royal court, adjudicating disputes and issuing decrees with the authority of the king himself. Her ability to command respect and maintain order during these periods earned her the admiration of the court and the loyalty of the empire's officials. It was said that even the most hardened governors and generals softened in her presence, recognizing in her a leader whose strength was tempered by compassion. The queen's influence was not limited to matters of state. Within the palace, she cultivated an atmosphere of learning and cultural exchange. Scribes were commissioned to record the history of Akkad. Poets composed hymns to celebrate its achievements, and artisans created works of art that reflected the empire's grandeur. Tashlultum personally oversaw many of these projects, ensuring that they not only glorified the king but also celebrated the diversity and richness of the empire's people. Her role as a mother was equally significant. Tashlultum and Naram-Sin had several children, each of whom was carefully groomed to play a role in the empire's future. As a mother, Tashlultum instilled in them a sense of duty and responsibility, ensuring they understood the weight of their lineage and the expectations that came with it. Her influence on their education was profound. She brought tutors from across Mesopotamia to teach them not only the Akkadian language, but also the traditions and histories of the peoples they would one day rule. Yet, despite her many achievements, Tashlultum's life was not without challenges. The burden of maintaining unity in a vast empire often fell squarely on her shoulders, and the pressures of her role could be overwhelming. The court was a place of constant intrigue, where alliances shifted like the sands of the desert. Tashlultum had to navigate this treacherous landscape with care, balancing the competing interests of governors, generals, and priests while ensuring that the empire's stability was never compromised. There were also moments of personal sacrifice. The demands of the empire often required Tashlultum to put her own needs and desires aside. Her time with Naram-Sin was frequently interrupted by his military campaigns, and the weight of their responsibilities left little room for personal happiness. Yet, through it all, Tashlultum remained steadfast, driven by an unwavering commitment to the vision she and Naram-Sin shared. By the midpoint of Naram-Sin's reign, the Akkadian Empire was at the height of its power. Its borders stretched farther than ever before. Its cities bustled with trade and prosperity, and its people enjoyed a period of relative peace and stability. Much of this success was attributed to Naram-Sin's leadership. But those who knew the inner workings of the empire understood the truth, that behind every triumph stood Tashlultum, the woman whose wisdom and determination had made it all possible. Her influence extended beyond the immediate successes of the empire. Tashlultum's policies of inclusion, her emphasis on cultural exchange, and her efforts to foster unity among Akkad's diverse peoples created a legacy that would endure long after her time. She had not only helped to build an empire, but had also laid the foundation for a shared identity that transcended the boundaries of language and tradition. As the empire reached its zenith, Tashlultum's role became even more crucial. The challenges of governing such a vast and complex realm grew with each passing year, and the seeds of future conflicts were beginning to take root. Yet, for the moment, the Akkadian Empire stood as a testament to what could be achieved through vision, strength, and unity. At its heart was Tashlultum, the queen who had transformed the shadows of the throne into a place of power and purpose. As the Akkadian Empire reached the zenith of its power, it faced an inevitable reality. Expansion invited opposition. For Naram-Sin, warfare was both a necessity and a means of reinforcing his claim to divinely sanctioned rule. But behind his celebrated campaigns was Tashlultum, who worked tirelessly to maintain the empire's unity and ensure that victory on the battlefield translated into lasting stability. It was during this period that one of the most iconic events of Naram-Sin's reign occurred: the victory over the Lalubi, immortalized in the famous Stele of Naram-Sin. The Lalubi, a fierce and independent people from the Zagros Mountains, had long resisted Akkadian control. They were known for their guerrilla tactics, ambushing caravans and raiding border towns. Their leader, King Satyuni, was a formidable adversary who rallied his people under the banner of defiance. Naram-Sin, determined to assert his authority, launched a campaign to subdue them once and for all. For Tashlultum, the war presented not only a military challenge but also a test of her ability to manage the empire's internal dynamics during her husband's absence. As Naram-Sin prepared his forces for the arduous campaign, Tashlultum assumed responsibility for the logistical and political support that would be critical to its success. She organized the collection of supplies, oversaw the allocation of resources, and ensured that the troops were well provisioned. Her attention to detail was unmatched, She anticipated potential shortages and arranged for contingencies, recognizing that even the best-laid plans could falter without proper preparation. Before Naram-Sin departed, the couple held a grand ceremony in Akkad to seek the blessings of the gods. The temple of Enlil was adorned with offerings, and priests conducted elaborate rituals to secure divine favor. Tashlultum played a central role in these proceedings, addressing the gathered crowds with a speech that emphasized unity and resilience. Her words were both a rallying cry and a reminder of the shared sacrifices required to sustain the empire. As Naram-Sin's army marched eastward into the treacherous terrain of the Zagros Mountains, Tashlultum remained in Akkad, where she continued to manage the empire's affairs. She maintained regular communication with the king, using the network of messengers she had helped establish. These updates allowed her to adapt her strategies to the evolving situation on the front lines. When reports of initial skirmishes reached Akkad, Tashlultum acted swiftly to send reinforcements and supplies, ensuring that the army could maintain its momentum. The campaign against the Lulubi was grueling. The mountainous terrain favored the defenders, and the Lulubi fought with a tenacity that tested even the seasoned Akkadian troops. Naram-Sin led his forces with characteristic boldness, refusing to retreat despite heavy losses. His determination inspired his soldiers, but it also placed immense pressure on Tashlultum, who had to navigate the growing unrest within the empire. Governors and nobles, emboldened by the king's absence, began to jostle for influence. Some questioned the wisdom of committing so many resources to a distant war, while others saw an opportunity to advance their own agendas. Tashlultum met these challenges with unwavering resolve. She convened the royal council, where she skillfully balanced competing interests and reaffirmed the importance of supporting the king's campaign. Her ability to mediate disputes and maintain order was a testament to her leadership, and it ensured that the empire remained united despite the strain of war. After months of relentless fighting, Naram-Sin achieved a decisive victory over the Lulubi. The battle culminated in the capture of King Satyuni and the destruction of his stronghold. The victory was not only a military triumph but also a symbolic one, demonstrating the might of the Akkadian Empire and reinforcing Naram-Sin's claim to divine favor. To commemorate the victory, Naram-Sin commissioned a stele, a monumental relief that would become one of the most enduring symbols of his reign. The stele of Naram-Sin depicted the king ascending a mountain, trampling his enemies underfoot as he approached the heavens. He wore the horned crown of divinity, a bold declaration of his status as a god-king. The imagery was both powerful and controversial, as it marked a departure from traditional Mesopotamian representations of kingship. For Naram-Sin, the stele was a statement of his unparalleled authority. For Tashlultum, it was a reminder of the delicate balance she had to maintain between ambition and stability. When Naram-Sin returned to Akkad, he was greeted with a hero's welcome. The streets were lined with cheering crowds, and the palace was adorned with banners and garlands. Tashlultum stood at the forefront of the celebration, her presence a symbol of the unity that had sustained the empire during the king's absence. Yet, even amidst the jubilation, she recognized the challenges that lay ahead. The war had drained the empire's resources, and the assertion of divine kingship, while strengthening Naram-Sin's authority, risked alienating segments of the population. Tashlultum took it upon herself to manage the transition from war to peace. She worked to rebuild the empire's reserves, overseeing the redistribution of wealth and resources to alleviate the burden on the provinces. She also engaged with the priesthood, whose support was critical to legitimizing Naram-Sin's divine status. Through careful negotiation, she ensured that the temples received ample funding and that religious rituals continued to honor traditional deities alongside the king's newfound divinity. The victory over the Lulubi and the creation of the stele marked a turning point in Naram-Sin's reign. It solidified his reputation as a warrior and a ruler of unmatched ambition. But it also underscored the complexities of ruling an empire that was both expansive and diverse. For Tashlultum, the war was a testament to the power of collaboration and the importance of foresight. Her efforts behind the scenes had been instrumental in securing the victory, even if her contributions went unrecorded in the annals of history. As the empire basked in the glow of its triumph, Tashlultum remained vigilant. She understood that the greatest threats often came not from external enemies but from within. Her role as the woman behind the throne required constant adaptability and an unyielding commitment to the ideals she and Naram-Sin shared. Together, they continued to steer the Akkadian Empire through a period of unparalleled glory, their partnership a testament to the strength and vision that had brought them this far. But even as they celebrated their achievements, the seeds of future challenges were already beginning to take root, a reality that Tashlultum, ever perceptive, could not ignore. As the dust of the Lalubi campaign settled and Akkad returned to a semblance of peace, a new chapter in Naram-Sin's reign began, one marked by his boldest and most controversial declaration yet, buoyed by his military triumphs and the aura of invincibility they conferred. Naram-Sin proclaimed himself a living god. For Mesopotamia, where kings had long been seen as divinely chosen but not divine themselves, this marked a radical departure. The declaration sent ripples through the empire, creating both opportunities and challenges for Tashlultum, the mortal queen tasked with navigating this uncharted terrain. Naram-Sin's decision was rooted in his belief that the Akkadian Empire, at the height of its power, required a new kind of leadership, one that transcended the mortal realm. The stele of Naram-Sin had already depicted him wearing the horned crown of divinity, symbolizing his unique relationship with the gods. Yet the formal proclamation of his divinity was not just an assertion of power, it was a calculated political move. By presenting himself as a god-king, Naram-Sin sought to unify his diverse empire under a single, indisputable authority. For Tashlultum, the declaration posed a delicate challenge. While she understood the strategic logic behind it, she also recognized the potential backlash it could provoke. Mesopotamian society was deeply religious, and the elevation of a mortal to divine status risked alienating the priesthood and the populace. Tashlultum knew that the success of Naram-Sin's bold vision depended on her ability to bridge the gap between tradition and innovation. Her first task was to address the concerns of the priesthood, who viewed Naram-Sin's divinity as a threat to the established order. Temples were the spiritual and cultural centers of Mesopotamian life, and their support was essential for maintaining the empire's stability. Tashlultum embarked on a series of diplomatic initiatives, meeting with high priests and temple officials to explain the king's decision and reassure them of their continued importance. She emphasized that Naram-Sin's divinity did not diminish the power of the gods but rather demonstrated their favor. Through careful negotiation, she secured their reluctant acceptance, ensuring that the temples would continue to perform their vital functions. Tashlultum also recognized the need to manage the public's perception of Naram-Sin's new status. She oversaw the organization of grand ceremonies and festivals that celebrated his divine role. These events, held in cities across the empire, were designed to awe and inspire the populace. Priests led processions that honored both Naram-Sin and the traditional gods, blending the old and the new in a way that emphasized continuity rather than disruption. Tashlultum's skillful orchestration of these events helped to ease the transition, fostering a sense of unity despite the radical nature of the king's proclamation. Despite her efforts, the shift to divine kingship was not without its challenges. In some regions, particularly those with strong local traditions, the proclamation was met with resistance. Governors and tribal leaders, who had long maintained a degree of autonomy, viewed Naram-Sin's divinity as a power grab that threatened their authority. Tashlultum worked tirelessly to address these concerns, using her diplomatic skills to placate dissenters and reinforce their loyalty. She offered incentives, such as reduced tribute demands and increased autonomy in local governance, to those who pledged their allegiance to the god-king. The transformation of Naram-Sin into a divine figure also had profound implications for the royal court. As the queen of a god, Tashlultum's position became even more complex. while she continued to play a central role in governance. Her mortal status created a subtle but palpable tension. Court officials, who had once viewed her as an equal partner to the king, now approached her with a mix of reverence and uncertainty. Tashlultum navigated this new dynamic with grace, using her position to advocate for policies that balanced the demands of divinity with the practical realities of ruling an empire. Within the palace, the declaration of Naram-Sin's divinity sparked changes in the daily lives of the royal family. Rituals became more elaborate, with the king's every action imbued with symbolic significance. Tashlultum played a crucial role in maintaining the balance between the ceremonial and the practical. She ensured that the royal household continued to function efficiently, even as its routines became increasingly intertwined with religious observances. Her role as a mother took on new dimensions as well. The couple's children, once seen primarily as heirs to the throne, were now viewed as the offspring of a god. This elevated status came with both privileges and pressures. Tashlultum was determined to shield them from the weight of these expectations, ensuring that they received a well-rounded education that prepared them for leadership. She brought tutors from across the empire to teach them not only the Akkadian language and customs, but also the diverse traditions of the regions they would one day govern. Despite the challenges, Tashlultum remained committed to supporting Naram-Sin's vision. She saw in his declaration not just an assertion of power, but an opportunity to forge a new identity for the Akkadian Empire, one that transcended the boundaries of geography and culture. Her efforts were instrumental in shaping this identity, blending tradition and innovation in a way that allowed the empire to adapt and thrive. However, the consequences of Naram-Sin's divinity were far-reaching, and not all of them were positive. The proclamation heightened expectations for the king's leadership, creating an aura of invincibility that was difficult to maintain. It also intensified the scrutiny of his actions, as any failure could be seen as a sign of divine displeasure. Tashlultum understood these risks and worked tirelessly to mitigate them, offering counsel and support to ensure that Naram-Sin's reign remained stable. One of the most significant tests of their partnership came in the form of a severe drought that struck the empire. Crops failed, rivers dried up, and famine loomed over the population. The drought, seen by many as a sign of the god's anger, threatened to undermine Naram-Sin's divine authority. Tashlultum took swift action, organizing relief efforts and ensuring that grain reserves were distributed to the most affected regions. She also engaged with the priesthood, orchestrating rituals and sacrifices to appease the gods and reassure the populace. The drought was a turning point in their reign, a reminder of the challenges inherent in ruling an empire that spanned both the mortal and divine realms. Through her leadership, Tashlultum helped to weather the crisis, demonstrating the resilience and adaptability that had become her hallmark. As the years passed, Naram-Sin's divinity became an integral part of the Akkadian Empire's identity. The king's proclamation, once controversial, was gradually accepted as a natural evolution of his rule. For Tashlultum, the journey from mortal queen to consort of a god was both a triumph and a testament to her enduring influence. She had navigated the complexities of divine kingship with wisdom and grace, ensuring that the empire remained united despite the challenges it faced. In the end, Tashlultum's role in this transformative period of Akkadian history was as profound as it was understated. While Naram-Sin's divinity would be remembered in the annals of history, it was Tashlultum who had made it possible. Her quiet strength and unwavering commitment guiding the empire through one of its most extraordinary chapters. As the Akkadian Empire flourished under the reign of Naram-Sin, the question of succession loomed ever larger. The future of the empire rested on the shoulders of the royal heirs, who carried not only the burden of their lineage but also the weight of their father's divine status. For Tashlultum, preparing her children for leadership was both a personal mission and a matter of statecraft. As queen and mother, she played a central role in shaping the next generation of rulers, ensuring that they were equipped to navigate the complexities of an empire as vast and diverse as Akkad. The royal family consisted of several children, each of whom was groomed for a specific role within the empire. Tashlultum understood that the strength of Akkad lay not just in its military might but in its ability to adapt and innovate. She believed that her children's education should reflect this philosophy, blending traditional Akkadian values with the knowledge and skills needed to govern a sprawling, multicultural empire. To achieve this, Tashlultum brought together a diverse group of tutors and advisors from across Mesopotamia. These educators were not only experts in their fields but also representatives of the cultures and traditions that comprised the empire. They taught the royal children languages, mathematics, astronomy, law, and history, providing them with a broad and comprehensive education. Tashlultum personally oversaw their studies, ensuring that each child's unique strengths and interests were nurtured. Her eldest son, Shar-Kali-Sheri, was the designated heir and the primary focus of her efforts. From an early age, he was trained in the art of governance and the principles of Akkadian kingship. Tashlultum instilled in him a deep sense of duty and responsibility, emphasizing that his role as ruler would require both strength and wisdom. She often involved him in courtly affairs, allowing him to observe the decision-making process and learn the intricacies of diplomacy. While Shar-Kali-Sheri was groomed for kingship, Tashlultum ensured that her other children were equally prepared for their roles. Her daughters were taught to manage estates and oversee administrative duties, skills that would make them valuable allies to their future husbands and influential figures in their own right. Her younger sons were trained as military leaders and governors, destined to support their elder brother by maintaining order in the provinces. Tashlultum's influence extended beyond education. She worked tirelessly to foster a sense of unity and cooperation among her children. Knowing that sibling rivalry could destabilize the empire, she encouraged them to see themselves not as competitors but as collaborators, each contributing to the greater good of Akkad. Through her guidance, the royal family became a cohesive unit, bound by shared purpose and mutual respect. As the children grew older, Tashlultum began to introduce them to the realities of empire building. She organized journeys to the provinces, where they could witness firsthand the challenges of governance and the diversity of the people they would one day rule. These expeditions were both educational and symbolic, reinforcing the idea that the royal family was deeply connected to the empire's subjects. One of the most memorable of these journeys was a visit to the city of Nippur, a sacred center of Mesopotamian religion and culture. Accompanied by their tutors and a retinue of advisors, the royal children participated in rituals honoring Enlil, the chief deity of the pantheon. The visit was a powerful reminder of the importance of tradition and the central role of religion in Akkadian society. It also provided Tashlultum with an opportunity to strengthen the family's ties to the priesthood, ensuring their continued support for the monarchy. Despite her efforts to prepare her children, Tashlultum was acutely aware of the challenges they would face. The Akkadian Empire, though strong, was not immune to the pressures of rebellion, resource scarcity, and external threats. The weight of their father's divine status added another layer of complexity, as it heightened expectations and left little room for error. Tashlultum often counseled her children on the importance of humility and adaptability, reminding them that their ultimate responsibility was to serve the empire and its people. Her relationship with Shar-Kali-Sheri was particularly close. As the heir, he bore the greatest burden, and Tashlultum was determined to prepare him for the challenges ahead. She often shared stories of her own experiences, offering insights into the demands of leadership and the sacrifices it entailed. These conversations, held in the quiet of the palace gardens or the solitude of the royal chambers, were moments of profound connection between mother and son. They reinforced the values of resilience and compassion that Tashlultum sought to instill in him. As the royal children came of age, they began to take on more prominent roles within the empire. Shar-Kali-Sheri was appointed to oversee key administrative tasks, while his siblings were assigned responsibilities in the provinces and the military. Tashlultum continued to support them, offering guidance and acting as a mediator when conflicts arose. Her influence was a steadying force, ensuring that the transition of power from one generation to the next was as seamless as possible. However, Tashlultum's efforts were not without challenges. The growing prominence of the royal children inevitably attracted the attention of the court, where rival factions sought to manipulate them for their own gain. Tashlultum had to remain vigilant, protecting her children from the intrigues of palace politics while teaching them to navigate its complexities. Her ability to balance these competing demands was a testament to her skill as both a leader and a mother. The legacy of Tashlultum's work with her children was evident in the stability of the royal family and the continued strength of the Akkadian Empire. Under her guidance, the next generation of leaders emerged as capable and confident, ready to carry forward the vision she and Naram-Sin had built. Yet, even as she celebrated their successes, Tashlultum knew that the true test of their leadership would come not in times of prosperity but in moments of crisis. The years she spent shaping the future of Akkad were among the most fulfilling of Tashlultum's life. They were a testament to her unwavering commitment to the empire and her belief in the power of education and unity. Through her children, Tashlultum ensured that the values she held dear, wisdom, resilience, and compassion, would endure, guiding the Akkadian Empire through the trials and triumphs yet to come. The Akkadian Empire, once a beacon of prosperity and unity, began to show signs of strain as Naram-Sin's reign progressed. While the empire still commanded respect and fear, the challenges of governing a vast and diverse realm increasingly tested its resilience. The declaration of Naram-Sin's divinity had strengthened the central authority of Akkad, but it also created new vulnerabilities, as natural disasters and rebellions threatened to undermine the king's claim to divine favor. For Tashlultum, these years were marked by relentless effort, as she sought to navigate the empire through crises that seemed to emanate from both mortal and divine realms. The troubles began with a prolonged drought that struck the heartlands of Mesopotamia. The rivers Tigris and Euphrates, lifelines of the empire, receded to historic lows, leaving once fertile fields barren. Crops failed, and famine began to spread across the land. The people, accustomed to the abundance of Akkad's golden age, turned to the gods for answers. Their prayers, however, seemed to go unanswered. Whispers of divine disfavor began to circulate, with many questioning whether Naram-Sin's proclamation of divinity had angered the gods, particularly Enlil, the chief deity of the Mesopotamian pantheon. Tashlultum recognized the gravity of the situation. The drought was not merely a natural disaster, it was a crisis of faith and legitimacy. The king's divine status, once a source of unifying strength, now became a point of contention. If Naram-Sin truly was a god, why had he not intervened to end the suffering? Tashlultum understood that addressing these doubts required both practical solutions and symbolic gestures. Her first priority was to mitigate the immediate effects of the famine. She mobilized the empire's granaries, distributing stored grain to the most affected regions. The reserves, carefully maintained under her supervision, proved invaluable in preventing a complete collapse of the food supply. She also organized work projects, employing the hungry to build canals and reservoirs that would improve irrigation and mitigate future droughts. These efforts not only alleviated suffering but also reinforced the image of the royal family as caretakers of the empire. At the same time, Tashlultum turned her attention to the spiritual dimension of the crisis. She worked closely with the priesthood, organizing rituals and offerings to appease the gods and seek their guidance. Temples across the empire became centers of prayer and hope, as priests led the populace in ceremonies designed to restore divine favor. Tashlultum herself participated in these rituals, her presence lending them an air of solemnity and authority. She understood the power of symbolism, and her involvement was a reminder that the royal family stood with the people in their time of need. Despite these efforts, unrest began to simmer in the provinces. The famine had weakened the empire's grip on its territories, and local leaders, sensing an opportunity, began to challenge Akkadian authority. Rebellions erupted in several regions, stretching the empire's resources thin. Naram-Sin, ever the warrior king, led his armies to suppress the uprisings. But the prolonged campaigns took their toll on both the military and the treasury. While Naram-Sin was occupied on the battlefield, Tashlultum assumed the burden of maintaining order within the empire's core. She worked tirelessly to prevent the unrest from spreading, using diplomacy and strategic alliances to keep potentially rebellious governors in check. Her ability to mediate disputes and negotiate compromises proved invaluable, allowing her to stabilize the situation even as the empire faced mounting challenges. It was during this tumultuous period that the legend of the Curse of Enlil began to take shape. According to later accounts, Naram-Sin, frustrated by the unrelenting crises, defied the gods by attacking the temple of Enlil. This act of sacrilege, it was said, brought a divine curse upon the Akkadian Empire, dooming it to decline. While the historical accuracy of this story is debated, the symbolic resonance cannot be denied. For the people of Mesopotamia, the idea of a king challenging the gods was both terrifying and captivating, a cautionary tale about the limits of human ambition. Tashlultum, for her part, sought to counter the narrative of divine retribution. She emphasized the resilience and endurance of the Akkadian people, framing the crises as tests of their strength rather than punishments. Through public speeches and ceremonial acts, she reinforced the idea that the empire's unity and perseverance could overcome any challenge. Her words inspired hope, even in the face of seemingly insurmountable adversity. Within the palace, the strain of the crises weighed heavily on Tashlultum and Naram-Sin. Their partnership, forged in ambition and mutual respect, was tested as never before, while they continued to support one another. The pressures of leadership created moments of tension and doubt. Tashlultum often found herself acting as a stabilizing force, reminding Naram-Sin of the vision they had built together and the responsibilities they owed to their people. The challenges of this period also deepened Tashlultum's connection with her children. As the empire faced threats from within and without, she relied increasingly on their support. Her eldest son, Shar-Kali-Sheri, emerged as a key figure in the empire's administration, assisting his mother in managing the day-to-day affairs of state. Tashlultum took great pride in his growth as a leader, seeing in him the qualities of resilience and determination that would be essential for the future. Despite the difficulties, Tashlultum never wavered in her commitment to the empire. She continued to seek innovative solutions to the challenges it faced, drawing on her deep understanding of governance and her unwavering belief in the power of unity. Through her efforts, she helped to stabilize the empire during one of its most turbulent periods, ensuring that the foundations of Akkadian strength remained intact. The drought eventually subsided, and the rains returned to Mesopotamia, bringing a measure of relief to the empire. While the immediate crisis had passed, the scars it left behind were a reminder of the fragility of human endeavor in the face of nature's power. For Tashlultum, the experience reinforced the importance of adaptability and foresight. She continued to advocate for policies that strengthened the empire's resilience, ensuring that it would be better prepared for future challenges. As the years passed, the legend of the Curse of Enlil became part of the empire's collective memory, a story that reflected both the triumphs and trials of Naram-Sin's reign. For Tashlultum, it was a reminder of the complexities of leadership and the enduring strength of the human spirit. Her role in guiding the empire through this period of uncertainty was a testament to her wisdom and determination, qualities that would define her legacy long after her time. Through her unwavering efforts, Tashlultum had helped to preserve the unity of the Akkadian Empire. Even as it faced the greatest challenges of its history, her leadership, though often overshadowed by the dramatic events of Naram-Sin's reign, was a vital force that ensured the empire's survival. In the face of adversity, she had proven herself to be not just a queen but a leader of extraordinary vision and strength, whose legacy would endure in the hearts and minds of the Akkadian people. As the years rolled on, the Akkadian Empire bore the marks of its trials, its glories, and its struggles. Naram-Sin, once hailed as the invincible god king, carried the weight of both his successes and his failures. Yet through it all, Tashlultum remained steadfast, a queen whose resilience and wisdom served as the quiet backbone of the empire. In the later years of their reign, her role shifted from one of active governance to one of preserving the legacy they had built together. This phase of her life was no less significant, for it was in this period that Tashlultum solidified her place in the annals of history. The drought and subsequent rebellions had left scars on the empire, but Akkad endured. Naram-Sin continued to lead military campaigns to reaffirm the empire's dominance, though the fervor of his earlier conquests had waned. At home, Tashlultum focused her energies on securing the stability of the empire for the next generation. She understood that the empire's strength no longer resided solely in its armies, but in its ability to adapt to a changing world. Tashlultum's attention turned increasingly toward the future. Her children, now adults, had taken on significant roles within the empire. Sharkali-Sheri, her eldest son and heir, emerged as a capable leader in his own right, though the burdens of leadership weighed heavily on him. Tashlultum worked closely with him, offering counsel and sharing the lessons she had learned over decades of governance. Their bond, forged in trust and mutual respect, became one of the cornerstones of the empire's continuity. In her later years, Tashlultum became a symbol of wisdom and stability within the royal court. Her presence commanded respect, not through the grandeur of titles or divine claims, but through the quiet authority of experience. Courtiers and advisors sought her guidance on matters both great and small, recognizing her unparalleled understanding of the empire's inner workings. Tashlultum's ability to mediate disputes and build consensus remained as sharp as ever, and her influence extended far beyond the palace walls. One of her most enduring contributions during this time was her work to preserve the cultural and intellectual achievements of Akkad. Tashlultum believed that the empire's legacy was not merely a matter of conquest or governance, but also a reflection of its cultural vibrancy. She commissioned scribes to document the history of the Akkadian Empire, ensuring that its stories and traditions would be passed down to future generations. These efforts resulted in an unprecedented compilation of knowledge, encompassing everything from royal decrees and military campaigns to religious rituals and everyday life. Tashlultum also championed the arts, recognizing their power to unite and inspire. Under her patronage, Akkadian artists created some of their most enduring works, from intricate carvings to grand statues. These pieces celebrated the empire's achievements while also honoring the diversity of its people. Temples were adorned with reliefs depicting not only the gods, but also the ordinary men and women who formed the backbone of Akkadian society. For Tashlultum, these works of art were a testament to the shared identity she had worked so hard to foster. As Naram-Sin aged, his health began to decline. The once vigorous king who had led his armies to victory and declared himself a god now found himself confined more often to the palace. The weight of his divine status, once a source of strength, became a burden he could no longer carry with the same vigor. Tashlultum remained by his side, offering both comfort and guidance. Their relationship, tested by years of shared triumphs and trials, deepened in these quieter moments. They often reflected on the journey they had undertaken together, the decisions they had made, and the legacy they hoped to leave behind. Despite her focus on the future, Tashlultum was not immune to the realities of time. She, too, felt the wear of years, though her mind remained sharp and her determination unshaken. She began to prepare for her eventual passing, ensuring that her work would continue through her children and the institutions she had helped build. She wrote letters of advice to her children, filled with practical wisdom and heartfelt encouragement. These missives, preserved by scribes, would later become treasured artifacts, offering insights into the mind of one of the most influential figures in Akkadian history. One of Tashlultum's final acts of leadership was to oversee the transition of power from Naram-Sin to Sharkali-Sheri. while her husband still held the throne. Tashlultum worked behind the scenes to ensure that the transfer of authority would be smooth and uncontested. She brokered agreements with provincial governors, secured the loyalty of the military, and reaffirmed the support of the priesthood. Her efforts paid off, as Sharkali-Sheri ascended to the throne with the backing of the empire's key stakeholders. Tashlultum's death, when it came, was a moment of profound loss for Akkad. The queen who had guided the empire through its greatest challenges and helped shape its golden age was mourned not only by her family but by the entire empire. Her funeral was a grand affair, attended by dignitaries and representatives from across Mesopotamia. Priests offered prayers and sacrifices in her honor, and poets composed hymns that celebrated her life and achievements. In death, as in life, Tashlultum was a unifying force, a symbol of the values and ideals that had sustained Akkad through its trials and triumphs. The legacy of Tashlultum endured long after her passing. Her influence could be seen in the policies and practices of her children, in the stability of the empire she had helped build, and in the cultural achievements she had championed. Her story, though often overshadowed by the dramatic exploits of Naram-Sin, became a source of inspiration for future generations. In the years that followed, Akkadian historians and storytellers would come to recognize the vital role she had played in the empire's history, casting her not as a supporting figure but as a central protagonist in the saga of Akkad. Tashlultum's life was a testament to the power of quiet strength, resilience, and wisdom. She had navigated the complexities of an empire at its zenith, weathered crises that tested its foundations, and left behind a legacy that transcended the bounds of her own time. Through her efforts, the Akkadian Empire became more than a collection of territories. It became a symbol of unity, diversity, and enduring strength. And in the hearts of those who remembered her, Tashlultum was not just a queen or a consort but a true leader whose influence shaped the course of history. Tashlultum's death marked the end of an era for the Akkadian Empire, while her husband, Naram-Sin, was remembered as the god-king who ruled at the empire's zenith. Her contributions remained largely unspoken, her name fading into the background of history. Yet, for those who had lived under her influence, Tashlultum's legacy was undeniable. Her wisdom, leadership, and tireless efforts to secure the empire's future had left an indelible mark on its foundations. In the immediate aftermath of her passing, the royal family and the court felt a void that could not easily be filled. Sharkali-Sheri, now the reigning king, struggled to step into the roles that his parents had so adeptly filled. While he had been groomed for leadership under Tashlultum's guidance, the burdens of kingship weighed heavily upon him. The challenges his mother had foreseen, the strains of maintaining unity across a vast and diverse empire, began to press harder in her absence. Rebellions flared with increasing frequency, and external pressures from rival powers loomed ever larger. Sharkali-Sheri often turned to the letters and teachings his mother had left behind. These texts, written with both love and pragmatism, became a source of solace and guidance. In them, Tashlultum had outlined principles of governance, strategies for maintaining alliances, and the importance of compassion in leadership. They were not mere instructions but reflections of her profound understanding of the complexities of rule. Sharkali-Sheri's efforts to emulate her wisdom brought moments of stability to the empire, though the challenges he faced were unrelenting. Within the court, Tashlultum's absence was acutely felt by those who had worked closely with her. Advisors and officials who had witnessed her ability to mediate disputes and foster cooperation now found themselves navigating an environment increasingly marked by factionalism and discord. Her loss underscored just how vital she had been to the cohesion of the empire. Many of these officials sought to preserve her memory by implementing the policies and initiatives she had championed. From cultural preservation to infrastructural development, her name was invoked in council meetings and ceremonies, a reminder of the stability she had brought to the court. Among the people of Akkad, Tashlultum was remembered with reverence and affection, Stories of her deeds spread through the empire, carried by merchants, priests, and soldiers who had experienced her leadership firsthand. These tales often portrayed her as a figure of compassion and strength, a queen who had stood with her people during times of crisis and worked tirelessly to ensure their well-being. In villages and cities alike, she became a symbol of resilience, a figure who embodied the ideals of unity and perseverance that had defined the Akkadian Empire at its height. However, as decades passed, the memory of Tashlultum began to fade from official records. Inscriptions and monuments celebrated the achievements of kings, while the contributions of queens were often overlooked or relegated to the margins. The stele and tablets that chronicled Akkad's history focused on conquests and divine proclamations, leaving little room for the quieter but equally vital work of governance and diplomacy. Tashlultum's legacy persisted in oral traditions and cultural practices, but her name gradually slipped from the formal narrative of Akkadian history. The Akkadian Empire itself faced a similar fate. After Shar-Kalisheri's reign, the empire began to fracture under the weight of internal and external pressures. Successive rulers struggled to maintain control, and the unity that Tashlultum and Naram-Sin had fought so hard to preserve began to unravel. Climate shifts, invasions, and the rise of competing powers further weakened the empire. And by the end of the 3rd millennium BCE, Akkad had fallen. Yet, even as the empire dissolved, the influence of Tashlultum's work endured. The cultural and administrative systems she had helped to establish were adopted by the successor states that emerged in Mesopotamia. The policies of inclusivity and cultural preservation she had championed became a model for future empires. From the Babylonian kingdoms to the Assyrian states, her vision of unity through diversity lived on, shaping the region long after Akkad itself was no more. Centuries later, as archaeologists and historians began to uncover the remnants of the Akkadian Empire, the figure of Tashlultum re-emerged from the shadows. Fragments of correspondence, inscriptions, and administrative records hinted at her vital role in the empire's governance. These discoveries prompted a re-evaluation of her place in history, revealing the extent of her contributions to Akkad's golden age. Scholars pieced together her story, drawing from both the material evidence and the oral traditions that had preserved her memory. Modern interpretations of Tashlultum's life have cast her as one of history's great unsung leaders, a woman who wielded immense influence in a time and place where power was often concentrated in the hands of men. Her ability to navigate the complexities of empire, to bridge the gaps between tradition and innovation, and to lead with both strength and compassion make her a figure of enduring relevance. Her story has become a source of inspiration, a testament to the impact that can be achieved through wisdom, resilience, and vision. Today, the legacy of Tashlultum is celebrated not just in academic circles but also in the broader cultural imagination. She is remembered as a queen who stood alongside her husband to shape the destiny of the Akkadian Empire, and as a leader whose influence transcended the constraints of her time. Her life, though once obscured by the grandeur of kings and gods, has reclaimed its rightful place in history, a reminder that the strength of an empire often lies in the quiet yet unwavering determination of those who stand in its shadows. In the end, Tashlultum's story is one of perseverance and hope. It is the story of a woman who, against the backdrop of an empire's rise and fall, carved out a legacy that continues to inspire. Though her name may have been forgotten for a time, her impact on the world remains indelible, a testament to the enduring power of leadership, vision, and the human spirit.